Waiting for you.
They had to balance the courthouse.
Yeah, one on each side. There you go. You want to sit? I keep walking. Hey, how are you, sir? Okay, I guess it's 7, isn't it? I'm calling this meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals to order. The first item is, I guess I'll call the roll. Jennifer Matthews.
Here.
I'm here. Alex Sharp, David Thompson, Ron McElroy, Eric Bird,
Here at sale.
and Michelle. I don't know what your role is tonight. She's the zoning administrator. And Gary Curry is the county administrator. He's here as well, in attendance.
Chuck Jackson.
The next item is to review and adopt the agenda for the meeting. Are there any changes, additions, deletions?
I move that the agenda be adopted as circulated and posted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The next, we're doing well. 1 for 1. 2 for 2, yes. The next one is minutes of the January 23rd, and Mr. Connick had made just a couple of corrections, which I think are in there, right?
I think I had left out something about the letter, and I left out about the court reporter, so I got that.
Certified
And
court.
so that's all in there now.
Okay, so we're good to go, I guess.
So I motion that the revised minutes for the 23rd, 29th
Is there a second to that motion?
be adopted as circulated.
I'm sorry, I wasn't finished. Okay, is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the next item is February 27th. Or did I?
No, you didn't.
Okay, February 27th. And that we had a copy circulated. Are there any additions or corrections or deletions? Is there a motion to approve?
The motion we accept the minutes.
You motion that?
Move.
Move. Is there a second? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Good.
Now we're down to the public hearings. The first public hearing is a special use permit, Annie Cato, for a family apartment. Are you here? Okay. Would you like to come forward, please? Come forward. You can sit up here if you like.
Oh, okay.
No.
Or you can sit here.
Oh, there. Okay.
So
That's not how to sit down.
No, that's pretty good. Would you like to just share with us briefly what you want to do?
What I'd like to do is have my existing home become a family apartment such that I can file for the permit and finish the unfinished home that's on the property as well.
And the permit you want is a building permit?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's a special use permit.
Well, she's
Right.
wanting that from us,
Right.
so then she can file for the building permit.
Correct.
And this structure has been there for a while? The one that you, oh, I'm sorry, the one that you want to make into the main dwelling?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And anything else to share with us?
Think there's anything else I need to share, Mike?
Well, if they turned it down, it will be.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever that is. Okay. Is there any other report? Chris, can you tell us what the planning commission did or said?
The planning commission recommended it,
Approval?
approved it, yes.
Did they have any conditions?
Not particularly.
Okay. Any questions from members of the board?
What is the septic?
David?
Well, I'm not sure if I have a question. I mean, I'm just gonna hold my comment till later, I think.
Okay. Okay,
I mean, Ron and I went in and looked at it yesterday, so,
okay.
and so I was there and that answered some of our questions, so.
Okay, so that's it for right now. I'm going to open the public hearing on this application. Oh, did Jennifer? Oh, did Jennifer?
No,
But he's helping me out.
there were some statements in your application about that there was verbal approval, agreement or approval on some, about the building. And then it was a farm bill, it is a farm building?
That's what it sounds right now. Agricultural.
Okay, has there been any agricultural activity in the building?
No.
But then was the purpose then to always, is to build it as farm use building and then switch it over?
Correct.
I'm a little perplexed of why it didn't start out as a residential home being built.
Because it started out as an agricultural building. I can't, my husband is deceased and he's the one who's in charge of those things. And I can only tell you what I know now and what I'm trying to write with the county and get all the permits and get things so that my property is functioning, I can age in place. I've been on the property for 23 years, in the county that long. So I don't have a whole lot of answers of the whys. I know that Bill had a lot of conversation with Richie when he was the building inspector. So that's about as much as I can tell you.
Doesn't sound like we're going to get a lot of that history.
Because I have a question now.
Okay.
You stated that he had a lot of conversations with Richie Burke, who was the building inspector at that time. Were you privy to those or present when those were going on?
No.
Okay.
I did talk to Richie after I found out that there weren't any permits. I talked to him on the phone. And he said he was going to review his records. And then I thought, well, this isn't in here, so.
But just
When was that conversation, give or take? I mean, approximately?
It was after I found out that, well,
like 10 years ago, 5 years ago,
oh, no, it
Just a
was
few months
about
ago.
the time,
a few months ago.
yeah,
Yeah, I-
on the market.
Okay.
Actually, I have another question also that I just thought of. Is that why did you make the decision to take it off the market? You put it on the market in October and took it off in December. What caused you to do that?
Because there weren't any permits, I couldn't possibly sell it. The property was unsaleable, which I didn't realize at the time when I did the listing. And then it was just like, you can't sell this building. So that was my thinking is, well, it's gotta come on.
So this was the original approval, I guess, or acknowledgement of the building, the farm
Affidavit.
building affidavit, which your husband, I guess, signed
Right.
and stated it.
It says it's an affidavit, but it's not an affidavit because it's not notarized,
Okay, but a statement, let's say.
whatever.
Okay. Is there anything else?
Well, one of the other things is that, is this the mobile,
No,
No,
that's.
That's the
That's the
structure.
farm.
that's the farm building?
That's the barn.
Barn. This is, and this was in 2004.
Put it this way, that's the structure that was built pursuant to the farm affidavit,
Yes.
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Well, it says this is signed in
98. before it was
98,
built. That was probably before it was built.
and he's going to, it says he's going to build a farm storage.
It started out as a shop, a woodworking shop.
And then it morphed to a farm accessory building, and now.
I'd say it started represented as a farm building. Right.
Well, she said it was going to be a woodworking
I
shop.
don't understand. Okay. Is it anything else?
Yeah, I have a question. I'd like to see that. It's this picture that, I don't know where it came from, but this picture, I think it's got a date on there, March 19, 2004. Is that the real date on there? I mean, is that the correct date on there?
Am I under oath or something? I
It could be.
guess it
Do you
is,
know,
yeah.
do you know or don't know?
Yeah, and I don't even know who took this picture. I mean, I guess maybe Bill did.
I don't know.
I think somebody in the county did.
We got it from Michelle, so.
The assessors took it at some county
Oh,
records.
so it's,
The
By-
assessor?
County.
Yes.
so it's dated by the assessor? Okay, well, that's good. Okay. Okay, well, we can have further discussion. I'm gonna open the public hearing.
Okay.
Is there anybody here who'd like to speak on this application?
That's against it, or?
No, I said on the application.
Either way.
Either way.
No, get ready? Okay.
What's that?
No,
No, you
that's okay, I'm good. I'm
Okay.
quiet.
There being nobody, I'll close the public hearing. Now, there has been a little bit back and forth about some of the history on how this all came to pass and what the building office did or didn't do and so forth. I would just throw out one thought, which is we do have a situation that exists on the ground right now. So what you have is this building and you have the smaller structure which you're living in.
Correct.
And my approach, unless proven otherwise, is probably would we approve, if this building did not exist, would we approve the building of this building to be the main house and convert the other house to a family apartment? And I think we have done that. I'm not sure whether these members of the board have done that, but I know we have done
No,
that.
that was one of my first questions, and it has, under the existing ordinance,
We have done
has
that.
there been a situation where the smaller house was?
Was
family apartment?
decommissioned.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, we did it,
The farmhouse had
one example out on the Father Stack Road, there's some of those smaller resettlement homes. And then they applied and built not a huge home, but a larger home, I think, on the same parcel by converting the existing dwelling to a family apartment.
Mr. Leitner did say in the first planning meeting that even though this, what I'm asking for is in reverse, that has been approved in the past as well. And I'm sure
Yeah,
the
we,
minutes will
I mean,
show that.
I don't know if that's, it's not that frequent, but I'd say we've probably done it 4 or 5 times.
I mean, he was very clear that it had been done that way.
So I'm not sure how much we need to get into the history of who shot John and when it happened and when it didn't happen, because I'm not sure that we're gonna get a final answer on all that. My approach, and I'm speaking strictly for myself, would be to look at it as, would we approve this? Ultimately, what this would end up with, and that's all I have to say.
Okay, I would disagree with that in that the history of this property is basically why we're here tonight.
Well, you have a dead man and a person who doesn't work for the county anymore, so I
Well,
think we're at an impasse there.
okay,
But,
hold
yes,
this.
but the history has a lot to do with why we're here. There were a number of things that were done on this property since '92 that were done without proper permitting and whatever. And because of that, when the property was put on the market, suddenly they realized they couldn't sell it because there were these discrepancies, and now basically we're being asked to overlook all of that, I guess, and bail them out so that they can move on. And I really wonder whether, with all of the questions that particularly David and I have identified, that there's so many issues. Is it a county issue? Is it a BZA issue? because there was activity going on that, according to the letter, the building official knew about, but was allowing. But we went to the property yesterday and we looked at the building that was on an affidavit sworn to be a farm building, and by looking at it, it was never, ever intended to be a farm building. I mean, it's the construction of it is such that, no, it was not that. And also because of that, and we realized this yesterday, was that the building in Rappahannock, for property tax or whatever, you're taxed on percentage of completion of the use of the building. And the use of the building under the affidavit was agricultural, but in fact, what was being built was a residence. So all these years, it's been taxed as a farm building at percentages of completion, as where it should have been taxed as a residence at percentage of completion. So there's been a tax loss to the county because of this mistake.
Who made the mistake?
I don't know that it was a mistake. That's kind of the issue.
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions, and one is this property in land use?
How many acres is it?
It's
26.
26, yeah.
It is in land use?
No, I mean, we've timbered it once.
Right. But I mean, have you ever grown any crops on it?
Well, if it's forest land, it doesn't.
I understand that, but.
Not crops, no.
Because, I mean, the farm affidavit says that a farm building needs a structure located on a farm utilized for the storage, handling, or production of agricultural, horticultural, and floricultural products. What's floriculture?
Flowers.
Okay, growing
Normally
houses.
intended for sale.
Are you really?
To domestic and foreign markets and buildings used for maintenance, storage, and use of animals or equipment related thereto. So I guess my question is, did you ever have any agriculture, horticulture, or floricultural products since 1998 on the property?
I would say,
The barn wasn't finished.
You can't allow participation.
yeah. I guess the answer is no.
Okay. My other question is on the existing, what's like a mobile home. Is that on a foundation?
Yes,
It is. And when the porch,
it's on footers, yeah,
like,
It's on piers or a foundation?
piers.
Piers.
It's type of, it's not piers, it's like cinder block, I have
Is
photographs.
it like a wall around it? Or
Is
is
there
it just?
I mean,
an entire wall around it of cinder block, or are they piers which are cinder
Just on
blocks?
piers.
Piers.
okay, so when the front porch or the porch, I don't know, that faces the other building, and I'd say it's in the back, when that was enclosed, when was that done?
Years ago,
Well, like how many? Before you
10,
started?
15,
Okay.
The windows were just put in 2 years ago, right? And
So-
I just want to know where this is going, and I want
No,
I understand.
we're not
I
addressing.
understand.
Just
But
please,
she,
please let us.
So, did you pull a permit for that? Was your husband still alive when that happened?
yes,
So he did that work?
yes.
Okay.
Let me just ask a question. Was your husband was a licensed contractor, right?
Correct.
So I would just repeat my thought, just to clarify what I'm saying is, and I guess you could go even further, you could say, were we to not have this structure on the property now, right? And she wanted to do what she's asking to do, would we let her do that? That's it.
To put a residence on there.
To put a residence on the property and to convert the existing small house to a family apartment? Would we do that? And so the question is, to me, is can this be brought into some form of acceptable state of, to the building department, to the building official, where it can be permitted, legally erected or reconfigured on the tax rolls, lived in, and the other one be a family apartment? Is there a problem with that? Because of the history.
Well, I have a problem, Mr. Chairman, and the problem that I see is, and I'm sorry that it's flashing on Mrs. Kagan, but, you know, as I look around, I think we have a tremendous problem in the county generally we had a case several months ago up on Aaron Mountain, which I think they subsequently withdrew, but, you know, what was there didn't match what was on the assessment card because they had built a big deck. And the question came up, well, why didn't you get a permit for it? And the guy was like maybe too honest and said, well, we're out in the country, so just thought he could get by with it. And, you know, I hear the question you're asking, but the fact of the matter is that's not what the ordinance says. The ordinance says, first you come in and you get a permit. And if that's what they wanted to do, they should have come and applied and then pulled a permit. And so, you know,
You're talking a building permit.
well, no, a special use permit for the use, the zoning use that they want, because the zoning ordinance says you're not supposed to have density greater than one dwelling unit per 25 acres in the agriculture zone. And this is an exception to that. And that's why, I mean, the family apartment and the efficiency apartment are both exceptions to that rule, where you're going to wind up with now 2 dwelling units on an essentially 25 or 26 acre lot. And, you know, for the board to just overlook what happened, I think is a mistake.
May I speak?
No.
Oh, no, not
Not right.
We'll
And
get to
so-
the chance later.
I mean, I'm not sure that I really do understand the circumstances because Ms. Cato says she really can't explain the circumstances. And, you know, to just turn a blind eye to it, I think is a mistake because it encourages more of the same. And we've got, let's face it, if you go drive around the county or drive to any property you want, they're secluded, they're back, you know, and unless somebody the zoning administrator doesn't have the time or capability to go drive around the county and verify that everything that's there was properly permitted. And so, that's the problem that I have with it. And that's the problem that I have with the efficiency and the family apartment generally. So I guess my questions to the applicant are, the first thing is the enclosed part on the mobile home or the actual principal dwelling that's there now, where you live. Would you be willing to work with the Commissioner of Revenue and figure out I don't know what the assessment, how that gets assessed or what it would be, but to go back and fix that issue and pay the back taxes on it from whenever you say it was built or enclosed and turned into living space and pay whatever taxes would be due
You're talking about on the little one.
on the little house. Because that's one problem. Would you be willing to do that? If that was in condition
Yeah,
of the
I'm
approval?
certainly willing to work with the county, and I think that's what I'm trying to demonstrate.
Okay, I understand.
And is it my turn to speak yet?
I guess.
Okay, so what I would say to this is I understand the issues that you just described and, you know, and I'm not condoning what Bill took upon himself to do. I also don't feel like I personally need to be thrown under the bus and set as an example when you yourself have just said, this happens all over the county. I can't undo what has been done. I'm trying to make right now that Bill's
Okay.
dead,
All right.
okay? So
And that's my question.
I will work with that, what you're talking about, the assessment to the trailer. But I also feel like there's some issue with the assessor who's been out to the property, actual physically been out there, and, you know, nothing's been changed on my taxes. So there's a little bit of responsibility on the tax assessor's side, I think, for Rappahannock County, no? Am I incorrect?
Okay, hold on, that's fine.
All right.
No, wait a minute,
But I wasn't finished. Well, I kind of got interrupted.
Well, I mean, let's not get into it.
No, I want to ask one more. So that's about the existing dwelling. The second one is about what's basically a house. And I guess my questions are, like, when did it, obviously, if this was 2004, when did the roof go on?
I don't know, Mr. Khan, I don't know those dates.
Okay.
So I'm not gonna give you a date that may be incorrect.
Well, I mean, it looks like the roof is like partly on and partly not finished in 2004.
I see that, but I
Okay.
can't answer your
And
question,
it
I
has a
don't know.
roof on it now.
Well, I mean, it's
That's
got,
15
it's got
years ago, I don't know.
tin on parts of it, I guess what's tin. The red part is done and the other part's not, so would it be fair to say that by the end of 2004, it was closed and the roof was on?
I don't think so, no. Mm-mm.
Well, when did the roof?
Why are we cross-examining
Hold on,
her?
no, don't,
I'm sorry.
Why are we doing
don't
this?
speak, you're out of order.
I don't know the date to answer your question, and I
Okay.
I don't know.
let's not
I'm not
fix
gonna
it.
Well, I'm
answer it.
not, I'm just
Because
trying to
she's
get a
not-
handle on it.
she's not gonna answer it.
It's,
I don't know. If I knew, I'd answer you.
We okay.
I appreciate that.
Okay,
But I mean,
I-
my question is, when did it got built to this stage?
By 2004.
2004, what
Right.
you're looking at.
So obviously, this part is not for a farm use, right?
You know, you don't have to sell me down the river. I didn't make any decisions about this, okay? I'm trying to make right with the county what Bill took upon himself. He's dead. I don't have the answers for him.
Okay, David, why don't you be,
And I think you're being,
hold on.
I'm just trying to find out what happened
Okay,
and when.
you're not gonna.
and I don't know,
Okay, but I
So
don't,
please
I don't
don't
know
ask me
there's
again.
no until now.
because I don't know.
Take it easy. Ron, go ahead and ask your question.
It's not a question, it's a statement, and you made a statement that why didn't the assessors pick up the change? The way it works, when you get a permit, you have inspections. And after that final inspection, that information goes to the Commissioner of Revenue, and based on that information, then they will send, not in the regular assessment process, but at that point in time, we'll go out and reassess the property based on the change of square footage to living area or whatever has taken place. But if you do not get a permit, then the county is not aware of that and cannot make that trip out there. And that's where the problem comes in, is if you don't get a permit, you end up, you're under the radar. You
Understood.
put you put on the addition, but you're not being taxed for it because you didn't go through the
But now we're
process.
talking now about the family apartment.
The family apartment, correct.
Or to be potentially.
Yes, that's the family apartment. Now, on the other building, we are being asked to forgive an individual who knowingly was operating, I mean, he knew what, he was a contractor, he knew what he was
We don't
doing.
have to forgive him. We're not
That
forgiving.
if we just say, fine, we're just gonna let you get a building permit for it now, yes, we are. There's no cost, and it sends a message to other people in that, yeah, you can go in under the radar and do this, but then you just apply for a permit and they go, oh, it's okay, and you get your permit and move on. So that's where
Well,
I
could
see
there be
it's a
some
problem.
middle ground?
And it's not anything with, I know you didn't do it, and, whatever, but it happened. It happened.
Okay.
But I'm trying to clean up the
No,
mess.
we've got the point. Is that your point?
That is my point, yes.
Okay, Chris, do you have any thoughts?
Yes. I feel in this situation, it is bordering on abuse of Ms. Cato. that she has come before our board
Thank you.
in honesty and of her own volition to try to rectify what is an unfortunate situation. One could read, however, that the farm building has not been lived in, so that at that point,
So table, recess, and continue. All right, under Article 4, agenda. The agenda for each regular meeting shall be established by the chair and vice chair
Good.
and distributed by the secretary.
Well, see, I just copied that from down there.
No, they were wrong.
We'll let that
So,
know.
because chair and vice chair determine the agenda, and then it is distributed by the secretary. Okay?
Yep.
Do
you have a problem with putting in there that after consulting with the members, the agenda?
Yeah, no, that would be good, that's a good thing.
Okay.
All right, and then,
I don't know.
then on page 6, near the bottom, 7
Page
dash,
6 or Article 6?
page 6, Article 7.4,
Yeah,
I,
Hey, Chris.
right?
I think Chris has this.
all right,
Go ahead, go ahead.
all right, so under I, it says, members of the public attending the public hearing shall be called upon to state their views of the case. We should say state their name and their address, so we know if they're in county, out of county, and their views on the case,
Okay.
okay? And then there you've got the zoning, the third from the bottom line, zoning administrator, appellant, and you've got a space between appellant and,
Good.
all right, and then I think he's gonna come back to that. Then, on page 7, and we're at K, 7.4K.
Yeah.
I would like us to put in here, or maybe as a new subset, something, that comments of the BZA members are limited to those at the hearing, meetings or hearing. BZA will not accept rebuttal briefs from board members.
What? What do you mean rebuttal groups?
I don't know, there was a time that you were sending those around all the time,
That was my dissenting opinion. Is that
or
what you
whatever
mean?
it's called, dissenting opinion briefs.
Whatever it's called.
I think that we should not allow that.
Okay, so the question is, Jennifer, can we allow
Okay,
that?
she wants to put in that, you can't put in a written dissenting opinion after the meeting.
I
Yes,
think that our issue was that we didn't want that to be in the record. Correct? I
maybe.
mean, he can circulate dissenting opinion,
But then it would not become part of the record.
not go in the file.
Okay.
Why would it not go in the
well, the idea is that it would give ammunition and fodder to disgruntled applicants
Well, we
to
could say,
challenge our opinions.
we could say,
What about when an appellate court judge writes a dissenting opinion?
Well, that's part of the
And
court.
then,
Wait.
well, we're part of the court too. What about when that happens? Don't you think that gives fodder to the people to say, okay, we're gonna take it to the
okay,
next level
the
up?
issue.
That's not a basis for letting it in or not.
The issue is when you, to me, the issue is when you have a board member making a case to overturn the board's decision and providing that prior to when the appeal period has ended. I don't think that's appropriate. I think it's fine after the
What
appeal.
about in court? The same thing happened. And here's the reason, to some extent, that was done is because the chair would not allow me to express what the basis of my opinion was, even though the rules say, I mean, I don't have a problem with that, because I'll state what my opinion is at the meeting, and frankly, I think that's how it should be done.
I think you.
But it says the BZA members may state their views of the case if they wish to do so, and then I wish to do so, and I got cut off. So you can't have your cake and eat it too.
But I'm doing so much better on that.
Well, I haven't
Right.
dissented much lately,
See.
but But seriously, I mean,
Sure,
I think that if a member wants to say why they don't agree, or why they're opposed something, or why they're in favor of something, it doesn't matter, because the board may be going one way or the other. But I think everybody on the board ought to have their say.
I think you were able to do that. Tonight?
Not always.
Tonight you did.
No, well, you're right, you've been getting better. But I mean,
But there has to be a
nevertheless,
point
I
of
think-
time that you can condense what you said.
well, I mean,
But
I think when you start to do that, you're just inviting a situation where, personally, if anybody else wanted to go on and on, that's our job, to sit here and listen to it, and perhaps have our minds change or be enlightened by their views, or be confirmed in what we thought to begin with. Either way.
I agree.
And I don't think there should be any limit on the board members making whatever statement they want to make.
But they can make a statement in the meeting.
And the meeting, I
and not-
understand that, but I mean, what?
Not to,
Okay.
I think it becomes, it's verging on First Amendment issue, in that, I mean, basically, if you become a member of this board, you lose your right to express your opinion.
well, people can express their opinion, but I think that we
we're
don't
just
need to have
talking
this.
about a written brief that is
Dissent brief.
circulated to everybody and their brother in plenty of time so that a person could pick that up and say, oh, I'm
Thank
going
you.
to,
Right, but what's the difference if they say all that at the meeting?
that's fine.
Okay, fine.
That's fine.
I'm fine with that as
All
long
right,
as
so
it,
then we'll put something in there that there's no dissenting briefs to be circulated after the meeting.
okay, fine.
So I guess that's a new,
Or that if they won't be included, I don't think you could say they won't be circulated, I think you have to say they won't be
included in the
record.
files. Okay.
Yes, I can go with that.
All right, then the second, then my
Well, I
last,
think we could say that you don't circulate them until the appeal period is over.
that's a good idea.
I don't
too.
think you can do that.
I think we can exact that standard from our members.
I don't think there's any basis in the law for that.
We should get an opinion on that.
Well, get an opinion.
Do that.
Okay.
All right.
We'll just start with our local attorneys and go from there.
All right, Article 8,
All right,
complete file on each appeal with special use permit variance shall be kept by the secretary's department of records.
where are you?
8.1.
How come it says Article 8, voting procedures, and then everything has a 7?
I don't know, I didn't write this.
Moron?
You wrote it.
I'm on page 8 and it's, I guess if this is, then this is
So this is really not.
IX. This is really 9. And it says we need to have
Records? Yeah, okay.
records.
Right,
So then it should say the secretary and chair are to sign the official copies of the minutes. Okay? Minutes of all
so
meetings.
that's number 2, 9-2?
I think it would be 8-2, or not, it'd be 9-2, because we're
Okay.
off. Minutes of all meetings shall be kept by the secretary in accordance with code, blah, blah. My question is where, we need to say where the records are housed, so they will be housed in the zoning office?
Yeah.
Can we keep a copy on the internet?
And then the next
Like
one
we
is,
did, like we have the library?
so, and then they're to be archived for X amount of, I'm talking, for X amount of period of time on board docs or on the county approved,
Okay. Website.
internet
Or-
website.
Yeah, there you go.
So, but, so.
There's got to be a written book.
So then, what, I don't know if it's for a year or 2 years,
Forever.
okay, but for the electronic ones, or the,
They keep it
They
how
can keep.
okay, all, then, for the next one, all records shall be public records. Then I think we need to add a thing that fees for photocopying, postage, et cetera, may be assessed by the administrative office of the zoning administrator. So if someone comes in and says, you know, I need to make a, 50-page copies here, do you all, charge for the copy?
That's separate. That doesn't need to be in the bylaws.
Okay, strike that one, and then,
Plus, if it's online,
They can print it up.
right,
Let
okay.
it be written, so let it be
Well,
done.
there's probably some documents. Then annually, the Board of Supervisors will provide a huge honorarium to the BZA members individually for each official business meeting. I think we should put that in there, and that we should, the BZA secretary is to be paid for his or her services.
Well, that's not really, doesn't need to be in the rules of procedure, I don't think, and also the honorary, anyways. I think that's beyond the scope of
All right,
15.2, 2308 or 9.
okay, well, those are things that came to my mind.
Okay.
So that's,
All right, I'll make those corrections.
Now, Chris had, I mean, I'm assuming this is when you wanted to introduce
Yes,
it.
I wanted to add to Article 7, number 4, conduct of BZA meetings and public hearings.
You have a copy of it?
I have
Yes.
Here's a couple of extra copies.
Okay, let's interpret this, like, what about what happened tonight? Was any of this violated?
I don't think so. I think tonight,
we tempered it down.
I will read it for BZA meetings will proceed with an atmosphere of respect and civility. Members of the BZA or any interested party, upon request to the chair, may be given an opportunity to rebut opposing views or state their views of the case if they wish. However, they shall refrain from abusive conduct, personal charges, or verbal attacks upon the character or motives of the members of the BZA, any county officers or employees, or members of the public. Members of the BZA shall listen courteously and attentively to all public discussions before the body and focus on the business at hand. They shall refrain from interrupting other speakers, making personal comments not germane to the business of the body, or otherwise interfere with the orderly conduct of the meeting. When members of the BZA present their individual opinions and positions, they shall explicitly state that they are such and do not represent the BZA or Rappahannock County.
What do you mean by the last paragraph? Is that at meetings?
At meetings.
Are you meeting
Yeah,
other
what
meetings? Like when in the general public, is that what you're saying? Like when you're at
Is that at a
party,
BZA meeting?
That's at a BZA meeting.
But not at a planning commission meeting?
Well, why do they have to, like, we all went around the table and I didn't hear anybody tonight say, this is my, of course it's your individual opinion or position.
He said, Alex said it once.
And they don't represent the BZA, well, I don't know, I guess it depends on how they vote, maybe
Well,
they do represent the
it-
views of the
It
BZA.
represents the BZA after the vote is taken and they have won the majority.
Okay, right, but I mean, why do you have to, it says, they shall explicitly state that they are such.
Yeah,
And do not, I mean, that to me is a
I
bit
think
much.
the intent of this is if you're at a party talking about something.
I don't think we're gonna get into that.
No, I'm
We-
just saying,
we cannot.
because I would have to be able to state my position at a meeting to make a decision. I mean, how do you,
I'm okay.
Nobody's saying you shouldn't.
Okay, I'm okay with the first two paragraphs, but the last one, I think that goes without saying. If you, I mean, it's already in there somewhere about stating your opinion after everybody, the public hearing and everybody
That's why we're here.
each member states their position. And I don't think you have to make a public announcement every time,
But
this
as-
is my position.
as a group, we make a decision based on the preponderance of
Of the individual.
individual decisions. So if I say one thing and three people disagree with me, then that's not the position of the
Then
board.
you should be
By
kicked off.
well, that too, but.
Kicked out as chairman,
Yeah.
kicked off the board.
And
I was gonna
taken.
say, you don't know what the position of the board is until the final vote.
Right.
So,
I'm okay with it except for the last
Could we do
paragraph.
what he suggested, just remove the last?
I would say, I would just say that there are a lot of words in here that are, if not defined, become somewhat meaningless, and that, I mean, is there
Well, could we-
abusive conduct, I mean, abusive is a big area, I mean, there's a lot of,
Yeah, a lot of people think it's abusive when you disagree with them,
yes.
you know?
Well, I
And we
certainly-
saw some of that tonight, I would have to say.
Yeah, yeah. Well, but not on our board.
No, I mean, of the members of the
Okay.
public sometimes, and we've had some other hearings that were, I mean, some of them were
Well,
fairly
do you-
contentious.
I think it's a lot of words But there's no way
Well,
to
Dave,
enforce it or
we-
whatever. I
We
mean,
understand. Is there a way to just incorporate this?
Yeah,
in
no,
there?
I'm sure.
Is that, Chris, are you okay if we
We'll
It's my
incorporate it?
opinion.
run it by you.
Oh, you're not?
I would like to have a revised version of this and then have.
For the next meeting?
Oh, yeah, okay, sure, if you can circulate it.
Okay. Not a problem. You notice I put May on there, okay? At the bottom.
I did notice that.
But not-
I didn't really think it was gonna go sailing through.
Okay, so Jennifer, what about the budget?
I have spoken twice with Michelle, and she said the budget was as we had presented it, it was presented to the Board of Supervisors, and she has not heard back, but I don't know if Gary Curry has had any insight into our budget.
Actually, I think we'll cut your advertising budget a little bit from what you asked. You asked for 5,000, I didn't put that in.
What'd you put?
Less.
Like a lot less?
Does it not raise up our honorariums? Does that raise our honorariums?
Yeah, we're looking at a balanced budget, I think,
Almost.
aren't we? Okay, see,
That's how it works.
okay. But you don't know the figure, you just reduce it.
I think it's 3,000. Then ultimately, if you end up receiving significantly more revenue,
Then we,
then that could be incorporated into the budget through
So it's a
some
wash.
appropriation.
okay.
And the more revenue would be through applications, which would require advertising.
Let me ask you a question. So if we get to say September, and we've just been swamped with applications, and we've used up all the $3,000 on
I
advertising,
must not have been clear in what I just said. If you have many applications, you'll have many application fees.
Right.
Those fees will enter the general coffers of the county, and therefore they would be right for a supplemental
available.
appropriation to your
but
budget.
you're not gonna do something like say you're gonna build a wall around the county and steal our advertising money and use it for that, right?
We'll put it in a lockbox.
He can't guarantee. He's not willing. Okay. Okay. I think-
People around here, they start that build a wall chant.
3,000 is your advertising.
Thank you. Sure. Okay. The next item, annual report.
Will you raise it back to 5 if you will?
I'm here as a member of the public.
On the annual report, I don't know if everybody had a chance to see it. I've added one sentence, or maybe two at the very end. And that's all the changes that I made. You can read it.
Was that in response
Is
to
this the new one?
Yes.
Connick's? I had a change.
Okay. Here's a couple of them. Okay, it's at the very end.
Where we have in bottom, second paragraph, last sentence. In mid-year, Mr. Anderson resigned after many years of service. And then we should say, and Ron Mackel was appointed by the circuit court judge, by circuit court judge Parker, or something like that.
Replaced by Ron Mackel, who was appointed by the circuit court.
It says that right here.
It doesn't say appointed by the circuit court judge,
So
so.
that doesn't show what I'm saying. This is going to the judge, right?
Well, it goes to the board of supervisors too, so I think we need to
Okay, well, I'll
add that.
just say who
All right,
was
let's, Macula was appointed by the court.
And that's what I have.
Oh, wait, and years of service, period.
And also what, you know what was left out, we gave him, we did a certificate of appreciation
So yes, I think we should put that in there.
after whatever
Do
meeting.
you know
that
what
was.
your
I was
term is?
I was selected to fill a position by the circuit court judge.
Whatever.
Selected. Okay.
The remainder of the position.
Do you know what the
actually,
remainder?
Should be the
do you
remainder.
know-
Oh, right,
do you know
the
what-
remainder.
do you
For
know what
this,
that
for
was?
this October, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those are the-
Okay, then
We've got to be
I think, having read what Connick sent around about annual elections and so forth, I think we should say here, the very first word, should say annual elections were held in the first meeting of the year, because then that is just using the same terms.
Where are you?
That's fine, I got it, annual,
And then,
The annual election.
our the annual
was held, not were held.
election was,
Election was held, yeah.
okay. And then, at the last sentence in the fourth paragraph, the Senate meeting which is held on the, it should be 3 RD, third Thursday.
Yeah, I got that.
That's, okay. Is that, other than those changes, is that fine?
Yeah. I haven't read what you
Strike at the bottom line, page 1, strike put forward and just put scheduled. Put forward into, just scheduled for.
Okay, schedule.
Oh, schedule for,
One of which left out.
was,
Was scheduled for hearing in January. Great.
okay.
Alright.
And what were the sentences that you added?
Just-
About the AG's.
It says finally,
Oh, okay.
just right.
Oh, okay, three, okay, got it now. The three lines. at the
It's
end.
one
Okay.
sentence.
Yeah, so, okay.
All right.
That,
I think after the rentals and boarding houses, these commissions were presented to, comma, but not acted on by the planning commission.
okay, okay.
And the finally, I think that should be like a paragraph, put a break in. Okay, great.
Okay.
Bring it back next time.
To bring it back.
Yeah, let's try and get it done by the end of the year.
Okay.
Do we have anything on our docket? The next
I don't know.
24th,
Not tomorrow. No, they don't check with me.
May?
Okay, I'm not sure on this next one why I'm listed as the lead on this, but follow up on comprehensive plan
You
discussion.
wrote the letter. I don't know, you made the agenda, not me, so
No,
what are you
okay.
asking me for?
But anyway, is there any follow-up or,
I would like to
Report.
follow up with that. We'll make Chris report. Then I'll follow up with him.
then you will have your opportunity to speak.
Finally.
So,
Well, Chris, can you give us an update?
Sure, there were 2 meetings that dealt with the comprehensive plan by the planning commission last month. One was a work session that basically went through all of the written questions and objections delivered to the chairman of the planning commission up to that point. And then there was further discussion of the planning process at the regular planning commission meeting on the 3rd Wednesday of this month. It seemed as if there's going to be another work session, and it would seem that these process is getting close to having a public meeting where the public will be invited to interact and comment on the draft that the commission has done.
Did they make some?
Is that a public, going to be a public hearing, or is that just a public comment session?
I think it's a public hearing with a public comment session. The work session.
Wait. If it's a public hearing, then the public gets to comment.
Well, that's not necessarily the case. The work session did not have public comment, and that was done to try to expedite the drafting of the what we call it, document that is going to be permitted or going to be discussed at the public meeting. The public was invited to the work session, but it was not invited to comment.
All right, well, we had made a number of comments that we put into a letter. Then at the open meeting, open comment session about a month ago, there was, some of us came and made reiterated those comments. Are they putting those changes? They're not?
I think they were they not put into that work session list?
Well, they were in the list, yeah, they're in the list, but then as I understand it, they looked at the list and they're not going to do anything about it. But, are you done with your report? 'Cause
Pretty much.
Well,
Mr. Connick,
I was
would you
at,
like to speak?
sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sure, it must be like pressing. I was at, I think well, actually all four of us were at the, this is April, so it must be the March,
Yeah,
the
and
March regular meeting.
and it failed to mention in the
And
newspaper.
then Ron and I were both at the, as well as Chris was there at this work session. And yes, they went over the list and they had all the things that were in our letter, but as I appreciate it, they pretty much decided not to do very much about most of them, except the affordable housing they're going to take up. The one thing that's in here that concerns me and that I wanted to comment on is on page 2 of our letter about the new statistics from the Commission about the agriculture statistics from the Department of Agriculture. And apparently there's a newer thing that just came out I guess the day after the planning commission's work session.
After the work session.
And pretty much the feeling of the commissioners, to the extent that they didn't vote on it, but they basically thought that what was in there, the outdated information that was in there, was okay, and they didn't want to take into account the new information and data. And I don't know, I find that pretty disturbing, because to me, that's one of the areas that shows that the comprehensive plan isn't achieving the desired results. And I think that I heard Mr. Bird's comments, and I thought they were very nice, but I mean, I thought I don't know, he could have said more about that topic and some of the things that were in our letter, and I wish that you would keep that in mind at the next work session. I mean, there's a lot of talk going around, and one of the supervisors came to the last meeting and said that, well, the comp plan isn't an enforceable legal document, and so it's okay the way it is, and just go ahead and as our Chairman Sharp said last time, just check the box and let's get it over with, and we can always come back and fix it up later.
That's so wrong.
I agree with you. It's not so wrong. I mean, the Planning Commission, and it's not really fair to blame the most of the current members of the Planning Commission, because they weren't on it except for, I think, one. But, you know, this job was supposed to be done in 2009. And so now it's 2019. And all this talk about, oh, it's an ongoing process, we can come back to it next year, next month, or sometime, whenever. Yeah, they could, but the fact of the matter is that what's passed is prologue. They haven't done it, and you commented to that effect. And I just feel that these, especially these agriculture statistics, show that some of what's in the comp plan about keeping Rappahannock a nice agricultural county is just a lot of happy talk. Frankly, the statistics, and there are government statistics, so you can't argue with them. The government's you know, they show just the opposite. They show things that agriculture, cattle, forestry, all kinds of stuff is down by as much as 2/3. So that calls upon the commission, which is supposed to, I think the language of the statute was in the Rappahannock News last week, was something to the effect of, they quoted the section, says they're supposed to make careful studies of trends and careful analysis. Well, I don't call it, I'm not sure what exactly that means, but when 3 or 4 of the commissioners, a majority of the planning commission says, oh, there are going to be new statistics out tomorrow? No, we don't have time to look at them. That to me is not careful analysis. And so I don't know what we're going to do now. We wrote a letter, and it got about the same reception as when Alex went and told them what our proposals and suggestions were on tourist homes. They said, we don't care what you think. So I don't know if it's effective to write a letter, another letter, and reiterate some of these points or not. But anyway, that's my thought. I'll be quiet now.
I was going to say, my observations were two. Number one, I felt that the chairman had three options of how to handle the 26 points that he had brought forward. And it seemed to me that basically the number one option sort of got pushed through. There was resistance to it, and that's the one where we just do as little as possible so we can get something, so we can check the box, and then we'll come back later and fix it. As opposed to the option number three is where you say, we didn't do a good job, and it's not a good document, and let's take the time and, put out a document that is really going to help us move in a positive direction for the future. The other problem I had was that the board seemed to be saying, the commissioners, that if you have comments, please give us them in writing, because otherwise we're not going to pay any attention to them. And the public comment in an open forum, they're really not that interested in, and I don't think that is correct. And they should not be pushing that option or telling people that. We're not going to listen to you if you stand up here in front of us, put it in writing, and we'll take a look at it.
Well, I would just say, I don't have a whole lot to say on this, but I would just say that I'm hopeful that with the input that we're giving to them, and there may be some initial resistance, I hope that over time they will absorb some of it and it will make a difference. And I think that's all we can do. And I don't think,
Should we write another letter?
I don't think writing a letter each
Well,
one.
I agree that we already wrote one letter, but I think we ought to instruct our representative to represent the consensus of the board.
I'm going to tell you what you just told me so that you know that I got it right.
Okay?
And so that what you would like me to communicate with the planning commission is, one, that the new facts and figures as delivered by the agriculture department be included into the discussion and
Even the plan.
Into the plan.
Into the
relevant.
plans, the graphs,
put into
the
the plan.
numbers.
Okay, and the other is that the plan itself is basically suffering from minor amendments and additions as opposed to an overall restructuring and
A robust rewrite.
or re-estimation, a new estimation.
Renovation
Well,
rather than paint.
I would say this, the policies, the general policies, or the principles and the policies, I think in light of what you said is pretty well accurate, but as to the last point, the policies, to the extent they're very general, are, some of them may or may not need to be clarified. But the biggest problem, and it's something else in our letter that I didn't mention earlier, and I'll mention it now, is Chapter 6. Everybody is totally focused, or I would say, not everybody, but I would say 90% of people, including the commission, including Phil Irwin, are focused like a laser beam on Chapter 6, because that's the only place in the plan it ever said anything sort of mildly specific about what the policies for the future are. But Chapter 7, that's entitled Future Land Use Plan, it doesn't have any plan in it. I didn't bring it tonight, but pull it out and look at it. All it says is, the plan is the plan, and but all those policies, how do you apply them? It doesn't say, and that's where that's supposed to be really the meat. That's part one of the most important thing. Then the Chapter 8 is implementation. It also says nothing. Nothing concrete. It says the implementation depends on the strong leadership of the Board of Supervisors, Planning Commission, and Board of Zoning Appeals. And if they're gonna leave the plan the way it is, I make a motion that we direct our representative to tell them to take us out of that sentence and leave it to the other guys. Because I don't, you know, it's not funny. It really isn't funny, because if you go around and you look at anybody else's comprehensive plan, they've got maps, they've got specific, you know, plans, like for each town and each area. Like in our county, it should be, you know, Chester Gap. Well, Chester Gap, this is the way Chester Gap is now, and 5 years from now, this is the plan for Chester Gap. I don't care if it says stay the same, or we want to have more housing up there, we want to have less, I don't know. Flint Hill. Flint Hill, here's a map of Flint Hill the way it is now, here's what the zoning is. Are we going to add some village residential? Do we need to do that? Nobody ever talks about this stuff. Nobody on the Planning Commission. I've never heard one word about it. Laurel Mills, Woodville, Sperryville. Sperryville, you know, come on everybody. Sperryville is so totally different now than it was in 1980. And not just because of all the people who died. It's a completely different situation. Totally different than what it was. And yet, everybody says, oh, the plan's working great and all that. None of what happened in Sperryville is anywhere in that plan. And likewise, none of the future is in there. You know, in the time since they wrote that plan for Sperryville, and since the time that the zoning ordinance was amended in 1986, they put in all that village residential around Sperryville. Most of it is, guess where? In the golf course. And that was for village residential and RR2, 2-acre lots, so that Sperryville could expand housing-wise. It's right there near the sewage treatment plant, so they could be easily connected to it. And yet, they took all that land that was zoned for that way, that pursuant to a plan, at least a plan that existed in the minds of the people who wrote it back then, and when they did the zoning map, they took it all, used it for a completely different use that wasn't anywhere in the plan. A total violation of the plan, and total violation of the concept, and total violation of the zoning map that they drew at or about the same time. Did they make any corresponding changes and say, well, if we're going to take all this small lot area out, well then maybe we should add some more on, you know, over somewhere else on Cliff Miller's farm so that he can be the beneficiary of it. I don't know, I mean, it shouldn't be personal, but that's the fact of what happened. And yet, none of that is in the plan. Why? Because there's no map in the future land use plan section. There's no map of anywhere. There's no indication whatsoever of what we want to see happen. And that's the meat of the plan. And there isn't any meat. There aren't even any bones in there. Then you've got a huge issue about land use. And some people have brought it up. Land use taxation is in the implementation section. That's how we're going to keep the county the way it was in 1980. That's how long it's been in there. Well, how's that working out? Has there been any analysis of it? Not a bit. And those are all the kind of things that need to be taken into account in the implementation section. You've got a subdivision ordinance that was written in 1966. It got band-aided up a little bit in the mid-1980s. It hasn't been changed one iota. Just about every single thing that anywhere else would be, quote-unquote, a subdivision that has to go through a planning process, that has to come to the planning commission, that has to submit a plan and the plats and everything, and get approved by the planning commission and then by the board of supervisors. You know how many there's been since 1980, when they amended it? None. Zero. Has the county been chopped up into a bunch of lots? Yes, it has, all over the place. So there's a disconnect there. There's all this stuff about cluster development. You know, after the meeting, one of the commissioners, I won't say who, came out, and I was talking about this density thing, about one dwelling unit per 25 acres. And yet, the minimum lot size in agriculture is 2 acres. And he said, oh, that's so you can transfer your development rights and you can do this and you can cluster. I said, yeah, that's why it's in there, but it never got written down. It's not in the future land use plan. You're supposed to be able to take 100 acres and instead of having, you got 4 dwelling units one per 25. So you can have 4 2-acre lots all down in the corner and then, or in the middle or wherever you want to have it, and then the rest of the land is supposed to stay open. Well, that was the theory back when that was done in the mid-1980s. But it never got written into the subdivision ordinance because it's not in the comprehensive plan. You can't find it. It says something about, clustering and all that, but it's never explained what it means, what I just said. It's nowhere written down. Not in the subdivision ordinance, not in the comp plan.
Well, David, on that subject, when you talk about clustering,
Yeah.
I think it would be better if you could actually cluster around the villages.
Well, that's a sort of a different
And
kind
that's
of
a different
clustering.
concept, but back in 1980, transferable development rights wasn't able to be done in Virginia.
Okay, well now it is.
And now it is.
Now it is.
So,
That's not in
yeah.
the comprehensive plan anywhere.
Yeah.
All these things that have happened since 1980 are just like nowhere to be found. And everybody sits around, I'll tell you my impression of the meetings, everybody sits around and tries to figure out reasons why we should really go into that, because it's going to take too long. Meanwhile, when are they ever going to do it? If it takes too long now, they've had 10 years to do it, they haven't done anything, except put Band-Aids on it. You know, they did important things. I don't know who did this, but in the climate section, I don't know if you read it carefully, in the red line section, in the climate section, they talk about the average temps and all that. Somebody decided, without any public discussion, and without consulting Bob Ryan, our local weatherman, to strike out a sentence that says the prevailing winds are from the south and southwest, and sometimes they come in from the north. It's in there. No, I'm serious. And somebody decided to take that out. Not about anything else, but that part of the climate, they took out. And, as far as I'm concerned, they could take the other part out too, because what's that got to do with land use planning? What the weather is. And all kind of things like that. Nobody had a real serious discussion about. And they never, even with all these letters and all the comments they have yet to sit up here and say, let's start with chapter 1. Who struck this out? Who wants to put this in? Why? What's this even doing in here? I don't know. They didn't even start with making an outline of what they want to have. And that's why they ought to go and look at other jurisdictions and see how they've structured it. And Gary Curry knows how they do it. He could help them. And it's not a question of having some fancy pants, consultants. It's the people on the commission have to do some work. And they have to sit around and talk about it, page by page.
Was that a motion?
Yeah.
Can I just clarify one more, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Relative to the U.S. Census of Agriculture, during that work session, I committed staff to updating that data, and that commitment was accepted by the Planning Commission, so staff intends to do that. I don't know how the...
Okay, that's great, but you just don't put the new data in the tables, which is what they've done so far. They put the new data up to 2012, up till now, into the chart somewhere.
Staff did not commit to interpret the data.
Right, well that's not the staff's job to interpret it. It's the commission's job to say, yikes, cattle herds are down by 2/3, or agriculture production is down by this, and hay production is down everywhere but on the Capiola property, by 2/3. There they set some new world record for how many bales of hay they made there.
On that, and on the agriculture subject also, as far as with the declining figures and whatever, I think in the plan, the commission needs to, in chapter 7, commit to, in the next 5 years or a period of time, whatever, interviewing the large farm owners and finding out what their plan is. Because we have lots of large farms that are being farmed by people that are getting very elderly and who have children who aren't all that interested in the property. And these are large tracts of land, and we need to know what the owners have in mind down the road, or do they need some help in planning that, so that something, so that, that there is some control over it or whatever. And I think that's vitally important, because we can preserve everything we want, but, like farmland, but if you got no farmers, you got nothing, you got a lot of land, and,
It's a good place.
So Chris, you got all that?
I got it all.
Okay.
Okay.
yeah.
I make a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
Is there a second?
No, this is fun.
I would just like to ask for one thing to be put on the next agenda
What is it?
at this meeting, and that would be a discussion on family apartments. And perhaps with a letter we could compose and send to the supervisors, because there are issues that are becoming very obvious with that should be dealt with.
You're saying we're recommending for the ordinance?
Yes, changes in the ordinance to deal with these.
Okay, there's a motion.
Wait, the motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Go.